Welcome. We are back with homeschool mom and political expert Alison Slatter to discuss the recent article entitled The Risks of Homeschooling that was published in the Harvard magazine. Yesterday, we introduced you to this article and discussed what exactly was behind it. So please, if you missed that, go back and catch up. Today, we will tackle a new question. We know how those within the homeschool community have responded to this article, but today we want to know, how are people outside of the homeschool community perceiving the Harvard magazine article? Alison, can you share a little bit about that with us?
Sure. Well, the good news is that I think it's pretty profoundly that it's absurd that they think that she's just off her rocker. And that's not just from like I expect it from the usual suspects like
Mhm.
HSLDA, our homeschool groups. I would expect it from those people, and I would even suspect it from more right wing, whatever that
Conservative,
means,
right, right,
conservative
right.
groups. I would expect that. And it's true, but even so, even with the conservative groups, they don't necessarily focus on homeschooling all that often. So the fact that they're now focusing on homeschooling and they're talking about it, that's something to take note of.
Mhm.
There's clearly been enough of a disturbance in the force that they're willing to talk about it.
Right.
Um, but additionally, we now have National Review, we have New York Post, we have Medium.com. You have these other entities that are also now starting to talk about it, and they're starting to
Mhm.
look at it from a pretty subjective, or not subjective, but objective
Objective.
standard. They're not homeschoolers. They don't necessarily know a lot of homeschoolers, but they can, on the face of it, see that it's not consistent with what our society is built on. And they're right. There's
Right.
no argument there because they're 100% right. Um, but the only thing that I really see that's wrong, and there's been wonderful rebuttals. I highly recommend going and reading and listening to some of these rebuttals because they really were fantastic and they really were good.
Mhm.
And everyone is rightly going right after Professor Bartolet, and they should.
Mhm.
She should.
Right.
But I think that everyone's far too focused on the professor because the reality is this is much bigger than her. This
Mhm.
is, yeah, she kicked the beehive and everyone's stinging her, and it's 100% justified to be stinging that foot. Absolutely. But what I don't see a whole lot of people doing is asking, well, why was it within reach of her being able to kick it to begin with?
Ooh, good question.
Why was that on the ground and not up in the tree where it's
Right.
safe? Um, and that's really what concerns me. I think it's pretty easy to rebut against some of the really outlandish things she had to say, but at the same token, there's a lot more going on there than just outlandish comments. It's more than that. So this is not happening in a vacuum. The fact that there's also was going to be this homeschool summit that was,
Mhm.
interestingly not inviting anyone who was pro homeschooling.
Exactly.
Um, you have to have multitudes of people who agree with this, sufficient to make it worthwhile to even have a summit to hold.
Right.
So what's going on here? I mean, there's definitely more going on here than just Professor Bartolet. She was merely, the person who kicked the beehive, but we need to figure out what brought about the fact that our limb is now on the ground where it can be stomped on.
Right.
And
Right.
that's where we need to start going, okay, what else is around this?
Right.
Um, and one thing I noticed when I was going through and doing research on the summit is there is a Syracuse University, their little magazine newspaper did an article on a student there who's a forensic scientist science program. And what she's wanting to do is gain investigative skills so that she can come in and investigate child abuse claims in homeschools,
Wow.
specifically for homeschools. So and she admirably wants to provide better protection for homeschoolers with disabilities. Not saying that's a bad thing, because obviously, if we have homeschoolers with disabilities, they do need to have their needs met as well. It can't just be, well, I'm doing whatever I want to do. And no, they need to be given an appropriate education just like everyone else. But she was also scheduled to attend this summit,
Hmm.
but she very clearly stated what her goal was. Um, to investigate homeschool abuse, not abuse, child
Not
abuse.
abuse in general.
Right. Which, hey,
Which
all
does
for
go
it.
back to what we talked about yesterday. There is a greater motive here. There's something greater
Right.
behind, because anybody that cares about child abuse cares about child abuse, not
Right.
one specific group of
Right.
children over another.
Yeah, the environment means little. What
Yeah.
means everything to those of us who really truly love and care about children is that they're abused,
Right.
regardless,
Right.
whether it's at home, whether it's at school, whether it's
Right.
at, you know,
I mean, that is highly concerning about this group of
yes.
people is they are prioritizing different. I mean, they're separating out groups of children and they're making them in essence more important to protect, which doesn't make sense at all. And
Well,
it really gives light into their not to protect, but to go after, I guess we
I
could
don't even know
say.
that makes them more important, but what they're trying to set up, really what's on an attack is parental rights. What they're saying is
Absolutely.
parents are not sufficient to protect
Right.
children's rights.
Right.
So now the government must do it. It's the government's job to
Yeah.
protect children, not
And we don't
parents'
need to look
rights.
into these other kids because they're already in the government hands. So
Right.
we're going to go look into this group. But that really is
Well, what that's
really
doing is
showing their motive.
but what it's also showing is their assumption that the children in government schools are already theirs.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what it's really pointing to. They've already said this is ours, but they're over there. We need them.
We need them because we already have these. So I think that's really
Yeah.
what we're looking at is the deeper side of this. This
Yes.
isn't just an article that was
No.
put out that we can throw away because articles come and go. It wasn't just a random summit. There is
Right.
something much deeper and much greater going on here. And that's what we need to wake up and be
Yes.
aware of.
I mean, for example, I was in another Facebook page, and a child advocate wrote on there saying homeschooling families are known to have, what was the term, exponentially higher rates of abuse. Where did this come from?
Come back tomorrow. We are going to look into this data or lack of data.
Yeah.
There is nothing that is founded on. But we
So,
will talk about that tomorrow.
but they're saying there's exponentially higher rates. But why? Where does this come from?
No.
Nobody knows.
No.
Nobody can back it up. The other thing is that also a friend of ours, her daughter is studying to be a nurse, and she was going through review cards for the exam that she needed to take for school, and the card came up, what is a likely indicator of abuse? And it had a bunch of different things, but one of them, and the correct answer, which is more alarming, the correct answer was the family homeschooled.
Wow. Yeah, we have a problem here and we need to be aware. Well, we are aware of this problem now. And the
Mhm.
one positive thing that has come to light in this is it just came to light, and we can see that we have a problem here. I'm also slightly encouraged that we're finding friends in places we maybe didn't know that we had them. We're finding
Well,
allies also in some places that we were unaware of.
politics creates strange bedfellows. They always say that.
Yes, that's true.
And we're seeing that, and I think that's a good thing. I really do think that there's a lot of. I really think the homeschool tent is huge.
Right.
I think it includes so many different minorities, so many different viewpoints, so many different religious. I mean, there's Hindu, there's Muslim, there's all kinds of
Right.
homeschoolers out there. So to say that we're only one thing is you clearly don't understand homeschooling.
That's
You
what I was
know
going to say.
nothing
They did
about us.
not do their research very well
I'm
because
like,
they're showing that.
clearly they have never tried to organize a homeschool field trip. Clearly. I mean,
I love that. That should be a prerequisite. Come organize a homeschool field trip, and then you'll understand that
right.
most of what you said doesn't exist. But something that I am constantly doing and teaching my kids to do is ask why. Like, why are they putting these out? Why? And I think you hit on something important. And it seems to me, I mean, I can't speak for them, but it seems to me that the why is, and she was very clear in her article, that she believes that children belong to the state, that our children belong to the state. So when you believe that children belong to the state, if there is a group of children that are not in your hands day to day, day after day, you are going to have to fabricate something in order to get those children back into what you believe belongs to you. So there are a lot of things that are being fabricated that are just not true. And I think the end goal, again, I can't speak for them, but you clearly said it as well. They have a completely different mindset on who our children belong to. We know based on God's word that our children belong to us. That is a freedom that was given to us by God.
Yes.
They do not believe that. And that is where our concern needs to lie. Right. And that's why we're going to come back tomorrow and go ahead.
Oh, but I'm not done yet.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I just want to let people know that we are going to talk tomorrow
absolutely.
about it, that this is not just about homeschooling. Um,
No.
and that's why tomorrow you need to have your friends join you that are not even homeschoolers, because this is about a lot more than homeschooling. So I'm going to pass it back on to you, Allison, so you can give us a little more education on this.
Okay. So one of the ways that I've seen this sort of bubble up from this astroturfing discussion that we had,
Right.
where it's very subtle. They're not doing it in your face, loud and proud. They're doing it very on the sly.
Right.
And one of the ways I've been seeing this come up regularly, and not just in my home state of Indiana, but throughout the entire country. And by the way, they're very well networked. This is a networked
Mm,
thing. They're going from the state to state to state. And, you know, fortunately, us homeschooling organizations are starting to get pretty well networked ourselves, and we're starting to see the patterns. And we're going,
right.
oh, we got your number now.
Totally.
But one of the things is I'm really starting to see these beliefs that somehow the kids aren't ours, they're really the government's, is
Right.
coming through legislation. And specifically at the state house, not in Washington, D.C.,
Mm,
but in your state capital.
mm,
That's where I'm starting to see this stuff happening. They clearly are not going to be dealing with the federal government. That's not the path they've chosen. They've chosen the much more less well defended
mm-hmm.
state houses, and that's a problem. So, for example, in my state this last year, we had a piece of legislation that was offered that would track only child fatalities in homeschools. Now, they tracked all child fatalities, but the only children that they wanted educational environment background for is homeschoolers. That's it. Nobody else. Not the ones who were in truancy problems or anything else. They only wanted home educated students. That's it. And it was specifically home educated students. Um, and I sit on a education outcomes task force for a commission that looks at basically improving the kids throughout Indiana. And one of the things that our committee sits there and talks about all the time are at-risk kids. And the number one indicator, the very first thing that people have found when a child's home life is starting to become unstable, the first thing to go is truancy. They
Mm-hmm.
start running into truancy problems. And so it is well known to be a tag for something going wrong in that child's life, and that the parental structure or somehow this familial network is starting to kind of shred and fall apart. We know that's when we need to step in, yet that's not what's happening. Instead, they want to talk about homeschool families.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then when I looked at, so then I was like, okay, well, what is this report? What does it include? What does it look like? So I went in there, and 89 to 91%, depending on the year that you're looking at, the children were under school age. So their being in school had nothing to do
To
with
do
it.
with it.
The vast majority of the kids were harmed and died as a result of what the parents, whether it was neglect or whether it was abuse. That law would not have helped them,
Yeah.
not even a little bit. So really what it's looking like is they're trying to come up with data to make the appearance that there's a problem.
Right. Totally.
They're creating it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it has
When
nothing
really
to
the
do.
data shows that the way we educate our kids has absolutely nothing to do with whether
Right,
they are or are not abused. I mean, that's what the
right.
actual data shows. But as we know, data can be skewed and used for whatever is behind
Well,
the purpose.
you know what Mark Twain said?
Share with us.
Mark Twain popularized, and I'm going to change the wording since this is a Christian audience.
Okay. Thank you.
There's lies, darned lies, and statistics.
I love that.
So, and I always
Yep.
remember that whenever I'm dealing with these things, because I know the statistics can be skewed to say whatever
Yep.
you want. So that's
Exactly.
why legislation like this kind of makes my hackles go up, because I'm going, I know what you're doing. You're trying to
Right.
frame us.
Right. Exactly.
And that's a problem, because really what they're going to be doing is running around beating us with it when it really doesn't say what they say it says.
Right. Right. Which is why we're doing this. Which is why
Right.
we're doing this. We're bringing this to light. Um, so before we go, I want to remind parents, you already know this. Those children are yours, given you to you by God to teach and train up, to love, to protect, to cherish, to teach. And you know this, and that's why you're choosing to homeschool your children. But not everybody knows that. So again, we're going to talk about on Friday um, what you can do to make sure that our voice is being heard, and really that the truth is being heard. But above that, just remember that this is a call given to you by God, which means you have God on your side. And when I heard that this was canceled, the summit, the Harvard summit,
Mhm.
2 days before, I had sent out a pretty large email, just doing nothing but calling moms to pray, because it was in the process that it might be canceled and it might not. And I tell you, when you call upon an army of praying, God-fearing mamas that love their children, that's an army that cannot be
Well, now wait a minute, it's not
defeated.
canceled, it's only postponed.
Postponed. Yes, postponed. And that's the thing. This
So,
battle,
don't stop praying.
yeah, don't exactly. And that's what we'll talk about also on Friday is um this hasn't gone away. This isn't
No,
going away.
and it's
Um
not new.
and it's not new. So you're gonna need to get involved. That's just the
Yep,
reality. You're gonna have
that's
to get
right.
involved. So
Exactly.
join us here tomorrow, and we are going to talk about more than homeschooling, and more that this is an attack on far more than homeschooling. So I ask you to share this with friends who cherish their parental rights, that deeply value the freedom that we have been given by God as parents, and have them join us tomorrow, and we're going to discuss that. So
I have
yeah,
a saying, my saying that I say over and over again is, "My homeschool rights are your parental rights." You
absolutely.
give away my right to homeschool, you give away your rights to parent.
Absolutely. So come back tomorrow. That's going to be our focus. And that is a truth that needs to be heard. So thanks, Allison.
Mhm.
We'll see you
Thank
again
you.
tomorrow morning. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.